Welcome to our EABH seminar, our lunch talk together with Reinhard Frost. We are going to talk today about images of finance, or the image of finance. This is on the occasion of marking the date of a workshop we were planning to have today in Athens, in Greece, and we still have to wait a little bit longer before we actually can all meet again in real life. But in the meantime, we have the pleasure to be entertained for our lunch by Reinhard, who is going to show us the photography collection of Lutz Kleinhans, who was the in-house photographer of the bank for a long period. And Reinhard is a member of the team of historians that works at the Historical Institute of Deutsche Bank, and he has published widely about his company's history and as well the history of banking. So he has published about the retail business of the bank, the engagement of the bank in the Rhine-Ruhr region in Germany, as well in Berlin, and more globally in Paris and Shanghai. So this is all I have to say, and I leave the floor to Reinhard. Really quick remarks. So we're going to listen for about 30 minutes, and after, you're welcome to join a more general discussion, ask questions. And it's always nice to ask the question in person. So if you have a question, raise your hand and unmute yourself, ask your question. And we're going to be recorded. So if you don't want to be on record, you have to turn off your video. Okay, please, Reinhard, tell us all about your pictures.
Yes, thank you, Carmen, so much for your very, very friendly introduction. Many greetings here from sunny Frankfurt. Yes, my topic is the photo collection of Lutz Kleinhans, and it all began when Carmen and Gabriella asked me to make a little, have a little contribution in the latest EABH volume on finance and photography. By the way, a very well-made volume, and there I wrote for the first time about this photo collection of Lutz Kleinhans, and then the idea was born to present it in this webinar we have today. Yeah, with the key question, how to photograph banking. And so I will tell you in the next 30 minutes about how the collection of Lutz Kleinhans came into our archives, what is a special character of the collection, what does it show, and how did we technically process the source material, and last but not least, how we try to unlock the potential of the collection. And now I would try to share my screen, and I hope it will work. Wait a second. So I have to ask you, Carmen, is it all right? Can you see? Oh, thank you, thank you. Half of the work done. Yes. Let's start with short introduction where I'm of my department where I'm working for. The Historical Institute is 60 years old now. Founded as one of the first company archives in the German financial industry, and a very important step 2 years ago, the archives of the Historical Institute were declared a national cultural asset, which prevents it from being disposed or translocated to somewhere else. All in all, the archives of the bank manage and retain about 12 shelf kilometers of documents, and among these documents are also roughly 50,000 media items included, images, films, audio records, and among the images, the Lutz Kleinhans collection is one of the most important collections of what we have regarding images in our archives. And so it came that in 2009, we acquired the whole photo collection, Deutsche Bank, from Lutz Kleinhans, including, and that was very important, the rights of use to use the photos. Why? At that time, we often, or for several occasions, we used photos by Lutz Kleinhans for publications of us, and each time we had to pay for it, and so coincidentally, or no, not coincidentally, Kleinhans, respective his wife Brigitte, who was always a team member of him. Get aware that we we often use photos of them, and then they offered us to buy the whole stock and all 80,000 image negatives he had of Deutsche Bank. Lutz Kleinhans, who was he? Was a very busy photographer. You can see him here in action for Deutsche Bank in 1986. With 3 cameras. He was always besuited when he went to events of Deutsche Bank, as you can see. Of course, he did not only work for Deutsche Bank, he was a full-time worker for the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, FAZ here in Frankfurt. But from 1967 to 1989, he worked as a so-called house photographer also for Deutsche Bank. And so, yeah, in 2009, the Kleinhans, Lutz, and Brigitte offered the collection to us. And then negotiations began. And it was quite hard because Lutz and Brigitte Kleinhans declared the photos as artworks, as we more or less considered them then being historical photos, historical documents. But after a while, we found an arrangement concerning the price we had to pay, somewhere in the middle, like always, and so we could take over the whole collection in 2009. What makes the collection so interesting for us is the long time perspective. As mentioned, more than 20 years, and this shows how the bank developed in that time, the inner life or the appearance of the people, of the of the offices, and so on. You can see two examples from back office in the early 70s and in the mid 1980s, how the appearance changed. And it's a mixture of techniques and Kleinhans uses, and a mixture of techniques and topics. For example, he also made color photographs. I would say 80–90% are black and white photos, but we have also a certain stock of color photographs in that collection. And here you can see 2 examples showing private client business here at Frankfurt branch, and a meeting in the mid 1980s. But let me say a little bit about the main topics. A handful of them can be extracted from within the 18,000 photos we acquired, and this is architecture, festivities, banking business, annual general meetings, management boards, culture, and society. And in contrast to what I've said when we had the negotiations with the Kleinhans, of course, some of the photos are really artworks, as you can see at this example, showing a reception on the occasion of Hermann Josef Ab's 70th birthday in 1971. You can see how the light incites and illuminates this company of honorable men, and that was in the focus of Kleinhans, to show people, always people. but with one exception, and that starts the first section of the photos we have, is architecture. There are, of course, series of photographs of Lutz Kleinert who took under the construction of Deutsche Bank buildings, in particular the headquarters here in Frankfurt. Here you can see example for the first high-rise here at Frankfurt, which was built roughly 50 years ago. This building was demolished 2 years ago. It's history now. And another example, today's Deutsche Bank headquarters, the so-called Twin Towers in Frankfurt. And for this photo, he even entered a helicopter to get a better view of it, and made this impressive photo showing the growing Deutsche Bank towers in 1982 among the other high-rise buildings in Frankfurt at this time in the early 80s, and which show how the Deutsche Bank towers significantly enriched the skyline of Frankfurt. Another topic, festivities. 50 years ago, 51 years ago, Deutsche Bank celebrated its 100th anniversary, and this event took place over more than for several days. And Lutz Kleinert at this event was always permanently in action. And so he photographed, for example, a trip for clients, for guests on the River Rhine. And here you can see here you have a really colorful impression of a group of guests. And in contrast to this, you have a very you can even say a serial photo taken at the official centennial celebration of Deutsche Bank. And here you can see a group of quite old white men, very uniform, and you won't find one woman on this picture, but that was typical for that time. Banking business. That is always difficult, or that's a key question of the whole volume of the EHVH bulletin. How to photograph banking? It's not that easy, because banks, in contrast to industry, they can't show production halls or products, speedy cars or something like this. We at banks have other things to show. For example, bond signings or back office departments, press conferences, meeting with executives of other institutions, and of course the daily life in the branches of the bank. Let's start with bond signing. Here you have on the left side an example. Signing of a loan for the city of Kobe in the late 1960s, and on events like these, Lutz Kleinert photographed the event, and when the delegates had their dinner afterwards, after the signing, they hurried into to their home photo lab, developed the prints, and after dinner, before the delegates departed, they had the chance to provide them with photos from the event. That was the style of how Lutz Kleinert managed such events. On the right side, a typical back office in the early 70s, and then we have an example for Deutsche Bank Meets the Press in 1971, the annual press conference. Above and below, a meeting of then CEO, Deutsche Bank CEO Alfred Herrhausen with the US ambassador in the mid 80s. And as mentioned, banking business, not banking business, all day or the daily business in the branches. It began in the late 1950s that Deutsche Bank and the other big banks opened to new customer groups, and in launching or in introduce small loans, and though other groups of clients came into the bank. And there we have two examples. But funny is the right picture, because that one is really post. No client would dare to enter a banking hall with a helmet on his head, as you can imagine. It was just fun, or just a way to illustrate the new group of clients. Among the photos Kleiners took for Deutsche Bank, annual general meetings were formed the largest segment. And here you have two examples showing how these events developed. On the picture below, you see the AGM in 1967, and then 40 years later, above in 1981. In the late 60s, the AGMs of the bank were a party for several hundred people, and some 10, 15 years later, it developed to event of where thousands of people participate. And although the AGMs are quite standardized format, Lutz Kleinmans always tried to find interesting views or motives. For example, showing the lady who collects the ballots, you can see on the left side or on the right side, an interested shareholder who started studying the details of the balance sheet. A rare, or it was quite rare that photographers were allowed to participate in board meetings, management board meetings, but Lutz Kleinmans had the chance for several occasions. The first one was in 1967, when he could make photos from the last board meeting with the legendary Deutsche Bank CEO Hermann J. Abs. You can see him in the center, and it's an interesting photo. You can see how he is the absolute center of the universe. All eyes are focused on him. All other board members, what is he saying? What is he thinking? And that changed under his successors. Here you have a few from the 3 years later, and you have a more democratic round. It's really more than or the CEO is then more primus inter pares than it was under Hermann J. Abs. And Abs again, in an occasion more outside of the banking business, related to culture. In 1981, he met the famous German artist Joseph Beuys, the man with a felt hat. He was famous for wearing such hats. And here you can see how Abs meets Beuys on eye level. A famous banker meets the famous artist. And on the right side, a nervous board member, Herbert Zapp, who was responsible for the art collection of Deutsche Bank, waiting when he maybe is allowed to say something also. Let's now jump to the more technical process. As mentioned, the photo collection physically exists in the form of negative strips in the format 6x6 and 3x2 centimeters. There may be other units in other countries, but these are the formats. And that was the way how it looked like when we took over the photos from Lutz Kleinmans in 2009. And then work began. After the acquisition, the complete stock of photographs was digitized. We digitized them of course, on the basis of the negatives, and in each photo in a high res, in a low resolution, and then we archived them afterwards. And all images, all image files were integrated in our database. It's a Salesforce application we use at the Historical Institute, and we provided them with metadata. And that was really hard work. It took several years because it was really detective work, in particular to to identify to identify the people who are on the photos. Yeah, and here you have an example for an entry of a data set in our database, and also a thumbnail photo is included in each data set. Last but not least, the potential use of the photo collection. And here you have an overview what we have already, or how we use the photos of the Kleinhans collection. Let's start with intranet. An example, some weeks ago, the topic was to women in leading positions at Deutsche Bank, and especially who was the first woman in the supervisory board of Deutsche Bank. We knew the name of the lady, Hannelore Winter, and that it was on the annual general meeting in 1971. And then we feed our database and found a lot of results within the Kleinhans collections. And then we had to select a motif. We choose this one, showing the first female member at the supervisory board sitting in a group of shareholders. And then we contributed an article about her. And here you can see the stage view in our on the intranet. And we had some more photos with which we illustrated this article. Another example, just 2 weeks ago, there was the idea on occasion of this year's AGM, a whole virtual event, of course, to recollect how AGMs looked 50 years ago. And again, we checked the database, and we found a lot of suitable images from the Kleinhans collections. So we could write and illustrate an article about that. From intranet to internet, as an example, some months ago we had a relaunch of the internet, the web presence of the Historical Association of Deutsche Bank, and there we used a lot of motifs from the Kleinhans collection to illustrate the new web appearance on this website. Here, an example, a sub-stage motif in the FAQ section on this website, using a photo by Lutz Kleinhans. Social media photos from the collection we have repeatedly used for posts on Deutsche Bank's Facebook and Instagram channels. And then, of course, another possibility is of course publication. And I mentioned the EABH bulletin, where I had the chance to make a contribution for describing the Kleinhans collection. And then last year we published an illustrated book on occasion of Deutsche Bank's 150th anniversary last year. 150 photographs by Lutz Kleinhans, 150 moments for each year, one moment, one photo. And on the left side, you can see how we are selecting or extracting 150 moments from 18,000 pictures of the Kleinhans collection to put them into the publication. We promoted the book quite successful on the above mentioned channels, internet, social media. And last thing is our exhibitions. Quite hard under the pandemic, but even in 2020, at least 2 small exhibitions could took place. an extract of 30 photos selected from the 150 moments in the publications, and they were shown at Deutsche Bank's headquarters in Frankfurt and at the Palais Populaire in Berlin, the Deutsche Bank's Forum for Art and Culture. As mentioned, due to the pandemic, only a few visitors had the chance to see the exhibition. But among them, you can see on the right side, Brigitte Kleinhans, the widow of Lutz Kleinhans, and his daughter Birgit. And as mentioned, Brigitte was always a team of Lutz Kleinhans photographer team, and so several motifs inside the collections, inside the Kleinhans collections, she took the photos. And for example, she took one photo, which I want to end this presentation. It's taken in 1978, showing a handshake. The Lord Mayor of Berlin welcomes the management board of Deutsche Bank at Berlin, and Lutz Kleinhans, and this was typical for him. He was self-confident, and he got in line with the management board of Deutsche Bank, and you can see the moment where a mixture of astonished and amused Lord Mayor shakes the hand of Lutz Kleinhans, the man with the camera. Thank you so much for your attention. And I would stop to share.
Thank you very much, Reinhard. That was amazing. I always like how watching these pictures is like, it's like time traveling a lot, like to see the you know, the environment of these meetings and how this evolves over time. I have to apologize in case you have experienced bad or a bit shaky Zoom connection, because in Athens we have the storm of the century, of course, exactly the hour of the meeting. So no, this is an exceptional collection. Thank you very much for showing us, Reinhard. Are there any questions?
Thank you for inviting me.
Are there any questions, suggestions from your colleagues? You can just raise your hand or even unmute yourself and just speak. I don't see. There's Maria has a question. Please, Maria.
Hello, thank you. That was really, really interesting. I was wondering, do you know why Deutsche Bank commissioned Lutz Kleinhans to take all of those photographs? Were they being used in publications, or was it a conscious decision to document the bank?
It wasn't. It wasn't a conscious decision to document. As mentioned, he was a full-time photographer for a newspaper, for Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, and Frankfurt isn't such a big city. Everyone knows everyone, and so the head of communications at that time, he met the press spokesman. He met Lutz Kleinhans, so he knew Lutz Kleinhans from several occasions, and then he asked him, why don't you want to take photos for us? And that was the simple explanation how it began to hire him. Yeah.
Do they still take lots of photographs today?
No, Lutz.
The Deutsche Bank.
We have a lot of photographers which document Deutsche Bank, but we have no project photograph Deutsche Bank for describing its history or its development. That is unique with the Kleinhans collection. As I mentioned, he photographed for the bank for more than 20 years, and that makes it so interesting for us.
Thank you.
So there's some more comments in the great presentations. Someone then, Martin Johansson from SEB, I think, says some pictures are really artistic. I would agree. Florenta Tillemann has a question. Have you taken any measures to ensure compliance with the European regulation on the protection of personal data?
Most of the pictures, a lot of the pictures are more than 50 years old, and the photos were taken on public events. And so it was clear for us when we, for example, when we published the book, that we do not use photos which could be against these data protections.
Thank you. And another question from Natalia Salguero is, she would like to know how the process of identifying people in the photos, how did that go?
Yeah, no digitized intelligence, or how do you call it? What is the expression for that? For the possibility that machines can identify people,
like facial artificial intelligence.
Yeah, of course. I mean, yes. No. We had to prove every image with our knowledge and on behalf with our database, our documents we have in the bank, and of course the internet to identify people. It's relatively easy to identify board members or people like this, but to identify people in a group on an event with delegations from other companies, that is quite hard. And as I told you, it took more than 2-3 years to identify not all people, but a lot of them. And that makes it, and each person we could identify or we could locate makes it easier to find something in our database if we check it, and if we want to know, do we have a photo showing, for example, Alfred Towers and the American ambassador and other people. And so that was really important to provide metadata, to provide metadata for all photos.
So you are fairly confident you identified the right people.
We hope so, yeah.
Another question is if digitization was this was done in-house, or did you outsource this responsibility?
We outsourced this. No, we had no resources within the bank to do so. No, we hired photographers for doing that for us. And as mentioned, always in different formats. And for the exhibition I mentioned at the end of the presentation, we had the pictures in really big formats, and then we again hired a specialist photographer to take care on the selected photos to digitize them from the negative strips again, and after cleaning the negatives, and that was additional work, but only for the exhibition. Yeah.
Can imagine. Serena Berno, she is curious.
I can't hear her. I have no chance to hear her.
You want me to repeat? You can see the question in the chat as well.
Oh.
Right, I'll turn off my video. Serena Berno wants to know if you decided about the metadata by yourself, or if there's a national policy or a bank policy for this.
No, for the metadata we decide for ourselves. We have a thesaurus we use with possible descriptions for as well for media, as well as for literature and files, and so we took that resource to provide each photo with metadata.
Great, that's great. So I'm having another look if there's any further questions or remarks. Of course, everybody who wants to know more about the entire process of making the collection useful and how you will be using it in the future can get in touch with you.
Of course,
and,
yes.
And everybody is invited to present their collections next. And do you have any final words, Reinhard? Anything?
Not a final word. No, I'm not prepared for this. But as mentioned, I'm astonished that I feel happy that so many participants came to that webinar, and so we had at least the chance to meet, and so maybe there's the chance to meet in person next year in Athens.
Exactly, perfect. You have regards from Washington, from the World Bank, Caroline Shaw from Schroders, Maria again from Barclays. Lilia Costabile says thank you. So I leave the meeting on a little bit. You know, type something in the chat. Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you all for coming, and well, see you to the next webinar. And if you want to see more collections, you can visit our website where the latest edition of the bulletin is online. You can see the photography collection of the National Bank of Greece. You can see collections of all of your colleagues. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. Have a nice weekend, everybody.